You're lucky, man. Not everyone's got free childcare like that, he said, laughing. And my son, my only son, replied, Yeah, it's convenient. She cooks too. He meant me. He meant me. I was standing in the hallway, holding my youngest grandson's backpack, waiting for him to finish tying his shoes. I wasn't supposed to hear it. The call had come through on speaker. Daniel didn't even glance my way. Maybe he thought I wasn't really there. Maybe after a year of cleaning cereal off countertops and folding laundry that wasn't mine, I'd become part of the furniture. A voice from the background. A function, not a person. I didn't say anything. I helped little Mason with his shoelaces, zipped up his coat, and walked him to the school bus like I did every morning. I waved, smiled, and then walked back up the driveway, past the trash cans that Daniel never took out, and through the front door of the house I didn't belong to. Inside, everything was as I'd left it. Dishes from breakfast still in the sink, a sippy cup on the coffee table, laundry, 3 baskets full, waiting near the machine. Lindsay's silk blouse draped over a dining chair, her perfume still lingered. I stood in the middle of the kitchen, looking at the clock. It was 8:17 a.m. I had exactly 23 minutes before baby Emmy would wake up and want her oatmeal. That's what my days were. Minutes, blocks, loops of time filled with tasks that no one saw and no one valued. I didn't cry. Not yet. Instead, I made myself a cup of tea. The fancy kind I'd brought from my house when I moved in, still tucked in the back of the cupboard where no one else touched it. I sat down by the window and drank it in silence. I watched the neighbour across the street water her petunias. She wore a bright yellow robe and hummed something cheerful. She didn't have children at home anymore. She was living a life. I remembered the conversation from a year ago, Daniel's voice full of concern. It's not good for you to be alone, Mum. This house is too big. Come stay with us. You'll have your own room, your own bathroom. You'll never be lonely again. He made it sound like an invitation. Lindsay had nodded, smiling, one hand on her growing belly, the other holding Mason's sticky fingers. It'll be good for everyone, she'd said. Family should be together. No one mentioned money. No one mentioned that being together would mean I'd be on call from dawn until midnight, that I'd give up my book club, my garden, my silence, that I'd live out of a suitcase in the guest room because there was no closet space left for me, that my pension check would quietly disappear into groceries and gas because, Mum, we're all pitching in. No one said that I'd stop being their mother and start being their solution. Emmy cried. I put down the teacup and went upstairs. When she saw me, her little arms reached out and her mouth curled into a smile, and for a moment I forgot everything. Babies will do that. I changed her, sang to her, made her oatmeal. She threw half of it on the floor. I cleaned it without complaint. At noon, I picked up Mason and James from school. James had a math test he didn't want to talk about. Mason had forgotten his lunchbox again. They argued in the back seat while I drove them home, listening, nodding, mediating. No one asked how my day was. At 4, Lindsay came home early from work, annoyed because she'd had a tough client. She dropped her purse on the couch, scrolled through her phone and muttered, "Didn't you fold the towels yet?" I didn't answer. At 6:30, Daniel came home. He kissed Lindsay, ruffled the boy's hair, and gave Emmy a quick peck on the forehead. "What's for dinner, Mum?" he asked, taking off his shoes. He didn't look at me when he said it. He never did anymore. I had cooked roast chicken, mashed potatoes, and green beans. The same dinner I'd made 100 times when Daniel was a boy, and we still had a home of our own. They ate quickly. No one said thank you. After, I cleaned the dishes while they watched TV. At 9:45, I finally sat down on the edge of my bed, knees aching, back stiff, mind loud. Just free childcare. That's all I was. I turned off the light and lay in the dark, and somewhere between midnight and morning, a thought came. Gentle, clear, steady. What if I stopped being available? What if I became a person again? The next morning, I didn't make pancakes. I let the boys eat cereal and clean up after themselves. I didn't pack their lunches either. Lindsay came downstairs and blinked at the cluttered kitchen, at the empty coffee pot, at me sitting calmly at the table with a slice of toast and the newspaper. "Everything okay?" she asked. "Just fine," I said, and kept reading. Daniel texted me at 11:03. "You forgot to pick up Mason from soccer practice." I didn't reply. Mason had a coach and teammates and a father. Someone else could manage it. At 12:45, Lindsay came home, flustered and sharp, Emmy screaming in her arms. "You weren't here?" she said, as if that explained everything. "I went for a walk," I replied. The truth was, I'd taken the bus into town. Sat in the little park, across from the pharmacy I used to own before I retired. It's a hair salon now. Bright pink awning, neon signs. Everything changes. I bought myself a blueberry muffin and a coffee. I watched pigeons fight over crumbs and remembered the years when I would rush from school, pick up to dinner prep, to late-night check-ins with Daniel about homework and nightmares. Back then, I did it because I wanted to. Because I was his mother. Because it was our life. Now? Now I was doing it out of habit. I came home to a mess. Lindsay's voice sharp as knives, Emmy still crying, James glued to the iPad, Mason refusing to brush his teeth. No one even noticed when I walked in. I slipped upstairs to my room, my windowless guest room with beige walls and a futon mattress, and I lay down. That night, after everyone was asleep, I took out the little notebook I kept in the drawer beside my bed. I made 2 columns, one for what I gave, one for what I received. Gave. Groceries, weekly, AVG 120, laundry. 8 loads, week, school pickups, drop-offs, meals. 3-day, cleaning, babysitting, AVG 40 plus, HRs, week, birthday planning, gifts, clothes, toys, dentist bills, sleep, energy, time, privacy. Received, room without closet, shared bathroom, criticism, disrespect, 0 pay. "You forgot again, Mum?" I stared at the lists until the ink blurred. The next day, I told Daniel I wanted to go back to my own house. He looked up from his laptop and said, "What for?" "I just want to check on things," I said. "You know it's easier here," he replied. "You've got everything you need." Everything I need. He said it like I was an aging appliance, reliable, outdated, yet still running. I waited another week, let it settle, let myself be sure. Then, one afternoon, when Emmy was napping and Lindsay was out, I made a call. "Hello, this is Serenity Companions. How may I help you today?" "I'd like to inquire about in-home care," I said. "For a loved one?" "No," I said. "For myself." The woman's voice brightened. "Of course, we'd be happy to help. What kind of support are you looking for?" "Cooking, errands, light housework?" "Companionship?" I said. "I'm moving back into my place, and I don't want to be alone." We set a date. I asked for someone who wouldn't try to take over my life. Someone kind but not patronizing. Someone who would knock before entering. After I hung up, I sat in silence. It felt like turning a key in a lock that had rusted shut. That evening, Lindsay complained about the casserole being too dry. Daniel asked why I didn't buy more almond milk. The boys argued over the remote. I didn't say a word, I just watched. And in my chest, something was building. Not rage. Not even sadness, clarity. The clarity stayed with me all night. Not like a storm, but like a slow tide coming in, touching everything I thought I'd known. By morning, I had made my list. Not of chores or groceries or after-school pickups. I had made enough of those. This list was for me. Things I miss. My own bed. Mornings without cartoons. Reading without interruption. Silence. My books. My garden. Being asked how I'm doing. Not being needed every second. That afternoon, while Lindsay was at work and Daniel was on a Zoom call in his office, I sat at the kitchen island with my planner and began mapping out the next 3 weeks. Not for their schedule, for mine. I called a moving service. A quiet, local one run by a pair of brothers who didn't ask questions. I told them I'd need a small truck, some boxes, and discretion. I booked them for the 3rd Saturday in May. They didn't ask what I was moving from, just where I was going. I gave them the address of my old house, still legally mine, just sitting there collecting dust. That evening, after the kids went to bed, Daniel sat down across from me and said, "Hey, Mom, Lindsay and I were talking. Maybe you could take the boys to that museum again this weekend?" I looked up. "I'm busy Saturday." He blinked. "Doing what?" "Things I haven't done in a long time," I said. He gave a short laugh. "Well, okay. Sunday then?" I didn't answer. He watched me for a moment, then said, "You know, we've all gotten really used to having you here." I nodded. "I know." He smiled like it was a compliment. A few days later, Lindsay had a meeting that ran late. She called and said, "Can you feed Emmy dinner? She didn't nap and she's fussy." I said, "I can't tonight. I have plans." Silence. Then, "What plans?" "None of your concern, Lindsay." She hung up without saying goodbye. That night, Daniel knocked on my door. "Everything okay?" "Of course," I said. "You've been off lately." "Have I?" He scratched the back of his head. "You're not thinking of leaving, are you?" I looked him in the eye. "Why would I stay?" He stared at me, mouth opening, then closing. "Because we're family." "And?" He blinked. Family, to him, was a net. One that caught his falling. One that held things together when they broke. One that didn't complain or fray. He didn't realize that even nets wear out. Even nets need mending. Or rest. I didn't argue. I didn't explain. Instead, I said goodnight and closed the door. The next morning, I went to the garden centre near my old house. Bought 3 tomato plants, some lavender, and a pair of gloves. Not because I needed them yet, but because I wanted to remind myself that I would have dirt under my fingernails again. The good kind. The chosen kind. I stopped by the apartment of the woman I'd hired. Her name was Jo. She was in her 50s, soft-spoken, no nonsense. "You sure you don't need more hours?" she asked. "Just mornings," I said. "Just someone to share a cup of coffee with now and then." Jo smiled. "Sounds like my kind of job." I gave her the key to my house. That night, Mason spilled juice on the couch. Lindsay scolded him. I reached for a towel, then stopped myself. Let her clean it. Let her be the one who bends and scrubs and makes it disappear. For a year, I had done all the disappearing. Quietly, politely, completely. No more. That Friday, Lindsay cornered me in the laundry room. I was folding towels, out of habit, not obligation, when she walked in holding one of her blouses. "This was dry clean only," she said. I looked at the crumpled silk in her hand. It was in the regular bin. She exhaled, sharp and theatrical. "That's why I told you to double-check the labels?" "No, Lindsay," I said calmly. "You never told me that." She blinked, thrown by the tone. I had never spoken to her like that. Not directly, not without softening it, wrapping it in apology. I kept folding the towel. Her eyes narrowed. "You've been acting strange lately." "Have I?" "Yes. Distant. Moody. I've been thinking, I said, smoothing the edge of a washcloth. About what? About my life, my time, what it's worth. Lindsay laughed, not cruelly, just dismissively. You're retired. You don't have to worry about that. I turned to face her. I think that's the problem. Everyone assumes that retired means ready to serve. Her face tightened. No one's treating you like a servant. I said nothing. I mean, of course we're grateful. No, I interrupted. You're not. And that's all right. Gratitude isn't something you can ask for. It's something you feel. She stared at me, the silk blouse forgotten in her hands. Are you planning to leave? Does that scare you? I asked. She didn't answer. Later that night, I heard her whispering with Daniel in the bedroom. The walls in that house were thin. Her voice was sharper than usual. She's been different, not helpful, not cooperative. Then Daniel. She's probably just tired. She'll come around. And then, quietly. Lindsay again. We can't afford to lose her right now. I lay in the dark, watching the glow of the baby monitor blink gently beside my bed. I thought about how many times I'd heard my own value weighed not in love, but in logistics. We need her. Not we love her. Not she deserves better. Just need, like a microwave, a backup generator. I closed my eyes and counted slowly. I still had 2 weeks until the move. 2 weeks to hold the line. 2 weeks to stop explaining, justifying, bending. The next morning, I let Lindsay pack the boys' lunches. She overstuffed the sandwiches and forgot Mason's allergy note. When I gently reminded her, she sighed, annoyed, not at herself, but at me. I smiled. Just trying to help. Her expression flickered, unsure whether to be offended or relieved. Daniel came downstairs late, already on a conference call, and asked over his shoulder if I could handle everything. I said nothing. Just handed him the car keys and nodded toward the school drop-off bag. He frowned. What's going on with you? I'm letting you parent your children, I said. He didn't like that. That weekend, Lindsay suggested I take the kids to the park to burn off energy. I said I had plans. What kind of plans? She asked. A friend is coming by. Who? A woman I hired to help me. You hired someone? I nodded. She's coming to walk with me, keep me company, make sure I'm eating. But why? I looked at her. That's simple. Why would someone like me, a grandmother, a live-in help, an invisible engine, need care? Because I'm a person, I said. Jo arrived on Tuesday morning, right on time. She wore comfortable sneakers, brought 2 travel mugs of coffee, one black, one with cream, and didn't ask if I needed help. She asked if I wanted company. There's a difference. We sat on the back porch for a while. The backyard was still damp from the rain, the plastic toys scattered like debris after a storm. Lindsay had asked me 100 times to keep it tidy, but never once come out here herself. Jo sipped her coffee, looked around, and said, You really live here? For now, I said. She nodded, didn't pry. You have any plans today? I thought we might walk to the park. For the kids? No, I said. Just us. We walked slowly, not because I couldn't move faster, but because I didn't want to. I pointed out a few places I used to go when I lived on this side of town. She told me about her daughter in Arizona, her rescue dog, her part-time gardening job. It was like talking to someone who saw me, not for what I did, but for who I was. That night, Lindsay was visibly irritated. Who was that? She asked as I came back inside. A friend, I said. Did you pay her? Yes. Lindsay blinked, processing. But why would you pay someone to sit with you? Why do you pay someone to cut your hair? I asked. Why do you buy coffee when you have a machine at home? She flushed, turned away, and muttered something about wasting money. Daniel asked me about it at dinner. Mum, are you feeling okay? You seem restless. I'm feeling clearer, I said, and ready. Ready for what? To go home. He set down his fork. Come on, Mom. We've talked about this. No, I said. You talked. I listened. He sighed. It's not safe for you to live alone. You're not young anymore. And yet, I'm here, raising your children. That's not fair, but accurate. Lindsay got up, took her plate, left the table. Daniel leaned forward, voice low. You're being kind of dramatic. I smiled. You'd be surprised how much energy I have left. He didn't say anything after that. Over the next few days, I quietly boxed up my things. Just a few drawers worth. Most of what I used daily wasn't mine anyway. I'd brought so little with me. A few clothes, my old teapot, a stack of books, my wedding ring tucked in a handkerchief. Joe helped me arrange the rest. The movers were confirmed, utilities turned back on, mail forwarded. I didn't tell anyone, not yet. The silence was mine to keep. It was my birthday. No one remembered. Not Daniel. Not Lindsay. Not the boys, who were too young to keep track of anyone's calendar but their own. Not even Emmy, though she smiled at me that morning with oatmeal smeared on her cheek, the only gift I'd get. I didn't expect balloons or cake. I didn't need a parade, but a simple happy birthday, Mum, would have been enough. Instead, Lindsay asked if I could watch the kids late that evening. She had a work dinner. Daniel had back-to-back meetings and needed quiet. I nodded, said of course, and started making scrambled eggs while Emmy banged a spoon against the counter. At noon, I took myself out. Joe picked me up and drove us to the edge of town where a little cafe overlooked the lake. I'd found it years ago, back when I still walked for pleasure, not errands, the same green umbrellas, the same chalkboard menu. We sat outside. What's the occasion? Joe asked, stirring sugar into her tea. I hesitated. It's my birthday. She looked up sharply. And you didn't tell anyone? I shrugged. They didn't ask. Joe didn't say anything. She just reached into her bag and pulled out a wrapped bar of fancy lavender soap. I keep a few of these for clients. Figured today might be one of those days. I held it in my hands for a long time. It was such a small thing, such a soft gesture. But I felt it like a stone in my throat. We had lemon scones. I paid. She drove me back. Before I got out, she said, "Next year we'll do something better." I nodded. Next year, I'll be somewhere better. When I walked in, Emmy had fallen asleep on the living room floor. Mason was building a tower with paper towel rolls. James was watching something loud on the iPad. The sink was full. The house smelled faintly of burnt toast and apple juice. Daniel came downstairs. "Hey, Mum, Lindsay's stuck in traffic. Can you put the kids down?" "I already did," I said, picking up a blanket and covering Emmy. "Thanks," he said, distracted. Then, just before turning away, he added, "You're a lifesaver." It wasn't a compliment. It was an expectation. A placeholder. I stood in the middle of that chaotic room and wondered what kind of life needed saving. Theirs or mine. At 9 yuck, I went to my room, closed the door, and opened the notebook again. I flipped to the last page. Things I will not do again. Explain myself when I say no. Wash clothes that aren't mine. Miss my own birthday. Pretend I'm not tired. Be grateful for crumbs. Justify my existence. I wrote each line carefully, like a vow. Then I slid the notebook into the box marked bedside drawer. That night, I dreamt I was standing on a shore, and someone was calling my name across the water. But when I looked, no one was there. I woke up peaceful, resolved. It happened on a Thursday. Ordinary, like most days in that house. But sometimes ordinary days split you open without warning. Daniel was home late from work. Lindsay was already in bed. I was in the kitchen, rinsing out Mason's thermos, when I heard him talking in the living room. His voice was casual, a little louder than usual. On the phone, clearly. I wouldn't have listened if I hadn't caught my own name. "No, man, it's been working out. She's basically free childcare." He laughed. Silence on the other end. Then, again, louder, more amused. "Yeah, I mean, we feed her. She's got her room. What else does she need?" I didn't move. The sponge slipped from my hand into the sink. The water ran over my knuckles, hot but not hot enough to cover the sound of him chuckling again. It's like having a live-in nanny, except we don't have to pay her. There it was. He said it. He said that. And just like that, every memory of the last year rearranged itself into something darker, sharper. Every time he'd thanked me with a distracted nod. Every time Lindsay rolled her eyes when I forgot to restock the almond milk. Every time I heard the word "Mom," but felt nothing behind it but expectation. Free childcare. That was the moment something ended. Not the love. Love doesn't die that neatly, but the illusion. The hope that maybe, deep down, they understood what I gave up. Who I had been before I walked into their house. What it had cost me. I dried my hands. Turned off the faucet. Walked upstairs without saying a word. I didn't sleep that night. Not out of pain. I'd had my fill of that. But out of planning. I reopened the notebook, turned to a fresh page. Tipping point. He said it. He meant it. He won't unsay it. I sat for an hour just staring at that page. In the morning, I packed 3 more boxes, labelled them in small, neat letters. Books, sweaters, photos. Jo came by. I didn't tell her what happened. She saw it in my face. Instead, she helped me sort what was worth taking and what I could leave behind. The cardigan Lindsay once gave me that never fit. A mug with "World's Best Grandma" on it, chipped, never used. Daniel left for work without a word. Lindsay was in a hurry too. No one noticed the tape on the boxes. No one asked what I was doing in the garage. I took my time. Every folded shirt, every wrapped plate, every decision. Mine. Later, I stood at the top of the stairs and looked down at the life I was about to exit. The couch with Cheerios in the cushions, the shoe pile, the drawings taped crookedly on the fridge, the familiar clutter of a family too busy to notice the scaffolding holding them up. I had been that scaffolding, and I was done. The change didn't come with a slam or a shout. It came in the silence. The kind of silence you don't notice at first, like a draft from a cracked window, or the stillness right before a storm. I moved through the house that week like a woman packing up her ghosts. I washed the linens I wouldn't be sleeping in again. I vacuumed under beds I hadn't been invited to rest in. I returned library books that weren't mine, and I stopped cooking. At first, no one noticed. On Monday, Lindsay tossed a frozen pizza in the oven and didn't comment. Tuesday, Daniel ordered Thai and muttered something about forgetting the kids' milk. Wednesday, the boys whined about sandwiches again. Lindsay shot me a glance over her phone but didn't ask. They thought it was temporary. They thought I'd get over whatever mood I was in. I didn't. On Thursday, I spent the morning at my old house. The movers had delivered everything. The electricity was humming. The fridge was empty. The bathroom still dusty. but it was mine again. I stood in the bedroom, my bedroom, and touched the frame of the window. It creaked a little, the way I remembered. The walls still held the smell of my old soap. That house had been waiting. I walked to the small guest room, the one Jo would use when she stayed over. She'd already left a pair of shoes by the door, a cardigan on the back of a chair. Her presence wasn't loud, just real. Chosen, not expected, not demanded. Before I left, I opened a drawer and placed the notebook inside. My vow book. One last entry, scribbled quickly. May 20th. Home. That night, after the children were asleep, Daniel cornered me in the hallway. He had that expression, part concern, part irritation. "Are you all right?" he asked. "I'm fine." "You've been distant." "Maybe I've been too close for too long," I said. He exhaled, trying to keep his voice light. "Okay, so what's this about? Is this some kind of protest?" I tilted my head. "Do you feel protested against?" He blinked. "You've been different." "I've been tired," I said. "Tired of living a life that doesn't feel like mine." "You're not making sense. You just don't like what you hear." He folded his arms. "We've all had to adjust this year, Mom. It's not like this was easy for us either." "I know," I said. "But the difference is, you chose it. I didn't. We offered you a place to live. You offered me a position, one that came without pay, boundaries, or rest. That's not fair. It's accurate." Silence. He stared at me, and for the first time in months, maybe longer, I saw something flicker across his face that looked almost like uncertainty, like the boy he once was, trying to explain a broken window. Then, quietly, "Why didn't you say something sooner?" I looked at him for a long time. "You wouldn't have heard it." He didn't argue, he just walked away. The next morning, I finished the last box. I labeled it Quiet Things. Inside, my mug, my wool slippers, 3 dog-eared books, and a photograph of me at 25, holding Daniel on my hip, smiling into the sun. The moving van would come in 2 days. I'd be gone before they had time to spin a story around it. No confrontation, no big speech, just space where I used to be. Saturday came quiet and golden, the way good endings often do. I woke before anyone else. Not from duty, but by choice. The room was still. No cartoons in the background, no half-closed doors. Just the hush of a house unaware that one of its bones was about to leave. I didn't make breakfast. I didn't pack lunches. I didn't look in on the children. Instead, I made myself a pot of real tea, not the instant kind they liked. I poured it into my own mug, the one with the small chip on the handle, and sat in the kitchen alone. The table had fingerprints. The window was smudged with days-old rain. Nothing was ready. And I didn't care. At 7:45 a.m., the moving van pulled into the driveway. Jo arrived 10 minutes later, carrying 2 muffins and a folded list. She didn't ask if I was sure. She didn't try to talk me into a grand goodbye. She just handed me the list and said, "Everything's on schedule." We moved quietly, efficiently. My boxes were already stacked near the door, 5 in total. I hadn't taken much, only what I needed, what had meaning. The rest I left. The candles Lindsay gave me, the world's best grandma apron that never fit, the blanket that always smelled like someone else's perfume. At 8:30, Daniel came downstairs. He was barefoot, rubbing his eyes, hair still messy from sleep. For a second, he looked young again. Not my son the father, but just my boy. He froze when he saw the open door, the boxes, the movers. "Mom? Good morning? What is this?" "I'm going home." He blinked, disoriented. Today? Yes. Why didn't you? I stood still, let the silence stretch. He stepped closer. You're really leaving? I was never really here. He looked past me, at the living room, the toys, the empty teacup. But you didn't say anything. There's nothing left to explain, Daniel. He opened his mouth, closed it, then tried again. We would have helped. Helped with what? I asked gently. The packing? The goodbyes? The guilt? His face coloured. That's not fair. I think it is. Joe walked past us carrying a box labelled linens. Daniel stepped aside. The boys came down a few minutes later, sleepy and curious. Mason rubbed his eyes. James asked if we were going somewhere fun. I knelt down, kissed their foreheads, told them I loved them very much. But you'll be here after school? Mason asked, eyes big. I smiled. No, sweetheart. But you'll be fine. Emmy was still asleep. I didn't wake her. Some goodbyes don't need noise. By 9:15, everything was loaded. Joe handed me my purse. The front door creaked, always that same sound. Daniel stood on the porch, arms folded. So that's it? He asked. I nodded. That's it. He didn't hug me, didn't offer help, just stood there, watching me walk to the van. I climbed in. Joe settled beside me. The engine started, and for the first time in over a year, no one asked me to do a single thing. As we pulled away, I didn't look back. The house was behind me. The years were behind me. The silence ahead, mine to shape. The first thing I did when I stepped into my old house was breathe. Not just inhale, breathe. The kind of breath you forget exists when your days are filled with someone else's noise. It smelled faintly of wood polish and quiet. My kind of silence. Joe set the final box down in the corner of the living room. That's the last of it, she said. You want me to stay for a bit? Yes, I said, but not to unpack. We didn't talk much. She made tea while I opened windows. The breeze was cool and clean, carrying the scent of early summer. Birds fluttered on the fence outside like they recognized me. I watched the curtains move. I listened to the old floor creak under my own weight. Just mine. There was no one calling from upstairs. No one pulling at my sleeve. No one asking, "What's for dinner?" At noon, I opened the box marked "Quiet Things." My mug, my books, my slippers. I placed them carefully. Not to fill space, but to make it mine again. Jo washed the 2 cups and set them on the drying rack. Then she turned and looked at me. Really looked. How do you feel? Like someone just handed me back my name, I said. She nodded. It suits you. Before she left, she paused at the door. You don't owe anyone an explanation. I know. She hesitated. But if he calls, he won't. She didn't press. When she was gone, I walked the house slowly. Each room held echoes, but not ghosts. My bedroom was sparse. Clean sheets, no toys, no laundry basket in the corner. I lay down in the middle of the bed, shoes still on. The mattress greeted me like an old friend. I closed my eyes. No one needed me. And that was freedom. That evening, I made myself dinner, just for one. Pan-seared fish, green beans, a glass of cold white wine. I ate slowly at the table by the window, watching the sun dip behind the trees. There was no mess to clean up but my own, no forks left out, no spilled juice, no one asking me to hurry, to repeat, to serve. I left the dishes in the sink. I ran a bath. I lit a candle. When I stepped out of the tub, warm and soft, there was a message on my phone. Daniel? Mum, call me, please. I put the phone down. Let him feel it. Let him sit with the weight of my absence, the shape of the space I used to fill without thanks. I walked to the back porch and sat down. The night was still, stars beginning to peek through the sky. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked, a train hummed. I felt no regret, only peace. And for the first time in longer than I could remember, I said aloud, to no one but the dark, "This is mine. This is mine." I didn't return the call, not that day, not the next, not when the third message came in. A voicemail, his voice strained, stumbling. "Mum, I don't know what happened, but can we talk?" Oh, he knew what happened. He just didn't expect me to actually walk away. I spent that week slowly. I learned the rhythm of my own space again, how the light moved through the kitchen in the morning, how the floor near the back door still creaked no matter how gently I stepped. I went to the market by myself, chose fruit without thinking of anyone else's preferences. I bought coffee beans and ground them in the afternoon, not because I needed the caffeine, but because the smell made the house feel alive. I sat outside in the mornings with my tea and read. The birds grew used to me again. Jo came every other day. We didn't fill the hours with chores. She helped me plant the lavender in the front yard. We made soup together once, not because we had to, but because it felt like something worth sharing. On Wednesday, we painted the small wall near the back steps, a soft sea glass green. "Feels like air," Jo said when we stepped back to look. I agreed. In the evenings, I let the radio play. Not loud, not for company, just enough to remind me that the world kept spinning. On the sixth day, Lindsay called. I saw her name flash on the screen and let it ring out. Then I blocked the number. She sent an email instead. "You've made your point. The kids miss you." "This is childish." I didn't respond. She followed with a second. "We depended on you. You left us in chaos." Ah, the truth at last. I read the words and smiled, not with cruelty, but with clarity. Chaos had been mine for a year. Let them hold it now. That night, I stood at my kitchen window and watched the moon rise. The backyard was quiet. No toys, no broken swings, no cereal scattered on the steps. Just lavender, just air. My body hurt less, even my knees. Funny how your joints remember relief before your mind does. Around 9:00, the doorbell rang. I didn't move. Let it ring. Whoever it was could sit with their need for once. It rang twice more, then stopped. The next morning, there was a note tucked under the mat. Daniel's handwriting, crooked from haste. Short. "Mum, I'm sorry. I messed up. Please call me." I tore it in half and tossed it in the compost bin with the coffee grounds. Let him learn something about decomposition. Let him see how things fall apart when you don't care for them. Later that day, Jo and I drove out to the farmer's market. We bought tomatoes and goat cheese and a little jar of local honey. She told me about her friend who opened a bookstore 2 towns over. I made a note to visit. "I don't know how you stayed quiet so long," she said as we drove back. "I don't either," I said. "But when I left, it felt like the first exhale after holding your breath for too many years." Jo looked over, one hand steady on the wheel. "You think he gets it now? Doesn't matter. You don't want him to." "Want has nothing to do with it," I said. "I needed space. He gave me shame. Now he gets silence." Jo whistled low. "That's a kind of justice." "No," I said. "It's balance." That evening, I unpacked the last box. At the bottom was a photo of Daniel at age 5, holding a paper crown we'd made from cereal boxes. His eyes were so bright, so full of love, of belief. I sat with it for a long time. I didn't cry. But I let myself remember, not to suffer, just to witness. That little boy had loved me. The man forgot how. And I had allowed that forgetting to continue year after year in the name of family. But love without respect is not love. its convenience, and I would no longer be convenient. The sun hadn't risen yet when I wrote the note. Just a few lines. Nothing sentimental, no trembling emotion. Just truth. Flat and final. I needed space. I gave more than I had. I'm reclaiming the rest. I didn't sign it. It wasn't a goodbye. It was a boundary. I slipped the note into a book. The one Daniel once gave me for Christmas, long ago, back when he still wrote inscriptions inside the cover. To Mum, my compass, and my comfort. He hadn't opened a book in years. I left the book on the nightstand in the guest room where I'd slept for 14 months, under a roof that was never mine. By 5:30 a.m., the last box was in the car. I moved without noise, without hesitation. Every step felt deliberate, anchored in a truth that no longer wavered. The house was still asleep. No lights flicked on upstairs. No one stirred. I didn't wake them. I didn't owe them my leaving. When I stepped outside, the air was cool, still holding the hush of night. I stood for a moment in the driveway, the house behind me framed in shadows. So much effort I'd poured into those walls. Meals, mending, middle-of-the-night diaper changes, school drop-offs, all absorbed into silence, all expected. They wouldn't know I was gone until they needed something. And by then, I would already be home. Jo was waiting at the curb, leaning on the hood of her car, sipping coffee from a thermos. She opened the passenger door when she saw me. "You sure?" she asked. "I've never been surer." We didn't speak on the way back. There was nothing to say that hadn't already been said in silence. When we reached the house, Jo carried in the box while I opened the windows. The sky was pale now, pink just beginning to creep behind the rooftops. Morning would come slowly, the way healing does, inch by inch. We made breakfast together, not out of duty, but as two women sharing space. She scrambled eggs, I toasted bread. No one asked me what came next. After she left, I took a shower, pulled on soft clothes, and sat at the kitchen table with a pen and a pad of paper. This list was different. What I gained back. Mornings. Silence, choice, my name, my spine, my life. I folded the list and placed it in the drawer under the spoons. I spent the rest of the day not answering the phone. It rang again and again. Texts came too. Daniel, then Lindsay. Then finally, a message from Mason's school account, likely her trying to bypass the block. I didn't read it. If it was urgent, they'd call the police. But I doubted it was. They wanted reaction, not rescue. By dinner, the calls had stopped. By bedtime, the silence had settled. It was only then that I let myself stand in front of the mirror. Really stand. Not as the nanny. Not as Mum, can you... Just me. My hair was fully silver now. My face was soft in the places it used to be sharp. But my eyes, they hadn't dulled. They looked straight back. "You did it?" I said quietly. And I meant it. No victory song, no parade. But there, in that stillness, I felt something larger than applause. Dignity. And it was enough. The silence didn't last. 3 days after I left, Daniel showed up. No warning, no text. Just the sound of tires on gravel and his familiar figure stepping out of the car like he still had a right to the view. I watched him from the window. He hesitated on the walkway, holding something. A bag, maybe a gift. Something he thought would soften the ground between us. His face looked older somehow, like the weight of the house without me had already begun to settle. I didn't open the door. He rang the bell once, then again, and then knocked. A soft, uncertain rhythm. Not the way he used to when he'd barge in, full of confidence and command. I waited. Eventually he sat down on the front step. He stayed there for almost an hour. I made tea, read, let the air stay undisturbed between us. Finally, he stood, left the bag at the door, walked back to his car with the slow, uneven gait of a man who wasn't used to being denied. Inside the bag, a jar of honey, a card, and a photo of the kids in a frame. The card said, "We miss you. I'm sorry. Please come home." I placed it in the drawer with the list titled, "What I Gained Back." He came again 2 days later. This time, Jo was there. She answered the door before I could say no. "You're not on the list," she said calmly, one hand still holding her tea. He stared at her. "I'm her son." "She knows." He tried to look past her into the house. "Is she okay?" "She's peaceful." He swallowed. "I don't understand. Why won't she talk to me?" "She did," Jo said. "You just weren't listening." He left again. The next call came from Lindsay. Voicemail. Tight. Controlled. Almost brittle. "We're in a really hard spot. James isn't sleeping. Mason's grades are slipping. Emmy's been asking for you. If you could just come for a few days." Not to apologize. Not to understand. Just to resume. I didn't respond. I went into the backyard instead and pulled weeds from around the lavender. The soil was loose, grateful. My hands remembered the rhythm. Dig, grip, release. I found an old worm curled near the root and smiled. Even the earth knows how to shed what no longer serves. That evening, Jo brought over pie. We sat on the porch, forks in hand, no plates, no ceremony. "You know," she said, "there's something powerful in a woman choosing absence." I nodded. "Most folks confuse silence with surrender," she added. "Let them," I said. "I'm not interested in correcting their stories." The phone rang again that night. I turned it off. I wrote another list instead. What I never want again. Walking on eggshells in my own skin. Being valued only for what I provide. Living under someone else's rules. Performing love like a service. Being everyone's solution but my own. I taped that list to the back of the pantry door, so I'd see it every time I reached for sugar. He came again. Alone this time. No gift bag. No photo frame. No hopeful expression. It was raining. Light. Steady. The kind of rain that soaks you slowly, like memory. He didn't have an umbrella, just a grey sweatshirt and a look that was smaller than I remembered. I opened the door this time, didn't invite him in, didn't ask how he was. Just stood there, dry and waiting, while he blinked through the drops like someone still deciding whether to speak or cry. "Hi, Mom." I nodded. I know I don't deserve much right now. Maybe not even this. But I wanted to say I'm sorry. I needed to say it to your face." Still, I said nothing. I was blind to what I asked of you, what I took. I thought I was doing the right thing, giving you a place to be close. But I see now I was just placing you where it was convenient. His voice cracked a little. "I thought you'd always be there. I think part of me assumed you'd just bend, like you always did. And when you left—" He paused, rubbing his hand over his wet forehead. "When you left, I realized I never really saw you. Not the whole you, just the part that helped." I stepped outside, let the screen door click shut behind me. The rain was soft on my shoulders. He looked up, eyes red, but steady. "I miss you," he said. I nodded again. Missing isn't the same as seeing. "I know." Silence stretched between us, not hostile, not even awkward, just necessary. "I'm not here to ask you to come back," he said finally. "I know better now. I guess I hoped you'd let me tell you that I'm learning." I folded my arms. Not defensively, just to feel my own warmth. What are you learning? I asked. He seemed surprised I'd spoken. Surprised, maybe, that I still could. That being a son doesn't mean possession, he said. That family can't be built on assumption, that you're not a role. You're a person, a whole one. The rain fell harder for a moment, then softened again. I want to do better. I know I can't undo it all, but I can see it now. And I needed to tell you I'm sorry. I looked at him then, not as a man standing in the rain, not as the child I once carried through fevers and scraped knees, not even as the father he'd become, but as someone trying to rebuild what he'd carelessly taken apart. I hear you, I said. His shoulders dropped slightly, like even that was more than he expected. But hearing doesn't mean return, I added. I know. I'm not your solution anymore. I don't want you to be, he said. I want you to be free. I didn't say thank you. Freedom isn't granted. It's claimed. I stepped back under the awning. You're soaked, I said. He looked down, half laughed. Yeah, I guess I am. Go home, Daniel. He nodded. Okay. He turned and walked slowly back to the car. No more words. No attempt to press the moment into something it wasn't. And I watched him drive away. No triumph, no sadness. Just rain on my skin and a quiet kind of closure. Some endings don't feel like a door closing. They feel like a window finally opening. A month passed, then another. No more visits, no more calls. Just space. Real, earned, uninterrupted space. I filled it slowly. Not with noise or new obligations, but with breath. With small, quiet things. I started going to the library again. The librarian remembered me from years ago. Said I hadn't changed. I smiled at that. She handed me a new book of essays about women and silence. I took it home and underlined almost every page. I joined a gardening group that met every Thursday morning. No one asked me to bring juice boxes. No one called me Mum. They just asked my name and listened when I said it. Joe and I started walking twice a week. Not far, just enough to feel the air. Sometimes we didn't talk at all. Sometimes we talked about the way women disappear into caregiving, into marriage, into the background, and how long it takes to return. One evening, I sat on my porch with a bowl of cherries and watched the sun slip behind the neighbor's oak. The light was soft, pink, and forgiving. I thought about all the years I gave away like spare change. All the ways I said yes when I should have said that's enough. And I didn't feel bitter. I felt wise. I felt whole. Daniel never asked me to come back, and I never offered. But one day, a small envelope arrived. No return address. Inside, a crayon drawing, 3 stick figures holding hands, and a fourth standing a little apart, under a tree with a book. It said, "Grandma, I miss you." I smiled. Children understand things adults refuse to name. I wrote back, just one line. I'm still here, just not in the same way. I haven't seen them yet. Maybe I will. Maybe not. But now, the meeting would be on my terms. Now, my presence would be a gift, not an obligation. And that changes everything. I keep a small list on the fridge now. It's titled, What Matters. It changes sometimes. But for now, it says, my name, said with care, time that's mine, kindness that isn't conditional, rest, books, boundaries, peace. If you've read this far, maybe you know what I mean. Maybe you've given too much, bent too far, disappeared in the name of being needed. Maybe you're still waiting for someone to see you, not for what you do, but for who you are. So let me say this clearly. You don't owe them your life. You deserve mornings that belong to you, silence that heals, presence that's chosen, not demanded. And if you're ready to take it back, your name, your time, yourself. I'll be sitting right here, cheering for you. Now breathe. And if this story touched you, if you saw even a shadow of yourself in it, share it. Leave a comment. Pass it to someone who needs to hear they're not alone. We may have been quiet for years, but we are not gone.